Excerpts from Chapter 23 of To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. According to Miss Stephanie Crawford, however, Atticus was leaving the post office when Mr. Ewell approached him, cursed him, spat on him, and threatened to kill him. Miss Stephanie said Atticus didn't bat an eye, just took out his handkerchief and wiped his face, and stood there and let Mr. Ewell call him names wild horses could not bring her to repeat. Mr. Ewell was a veteran of an obscure war. That, plus Atticus's peaceful reaction, probably prompted him to inquire, "Too proud to fight, you N-word-lovin' bastard?" Miss Stephanie said Atticus said, "No, too old," and put his hands in his pockets and strolled on. Miss Stephanie said you had to hand it to Atticus Finch. He could be right dry sometimes. Atticus discovered how deeply frightened we were. One night he said, "What's bothering you, son?" Jem came to the point. "Mr. Ewell." "What has happened?" "Nothing's happened. We're scared for you, and we think you ought to do something about him." Atticus smiled wryly. "Do what? Put him under a peace bond?" "When a man says he's gonna get you, looks like he means it." "He meant it when he said it," said Atticus. "Jem, see if you can stand in Bob Ewell's shoes a minute. I destroyed his last shred of credibility at that trial, if he had any to begin with. The man had to have some kind of comeback. His kind always does. So if spitting in my face and threatening me saved Mayellow Ewell one extra beating, that's something I'll gladly take. He had to take it out on somebody, and I'd rather it be me than that house full of children out there. You understand?" After that we were not afraid. Summer was melting away, and we made the most of it. Atticus assured us that nothing would happen to Tom Robinson until the higher court reviewed his case, and that Tom had a good chance of going free, or at least of having a new trial. "If he loses his appeal," I asked one evening, "what'll happen to him?" "He'll go to the electric chair," said Atticus, "unless the governor commutes his sentence. Not time to worry yet, Scout. We've got a good chance." Jem was sprawled on the sofa reading Popular Mechanics. He looked up. "It ain't right. He didn't kill anybody even if he was guilty. He didn't take anybody's life." "No, sir. They ought to do away with juries. He wasn't guilty in the first place, and they said he was." Atticus said, "The one place where a man ought to get a square deal is in a courtroom, be he any color of the rainbow. But people have a way of carrying their resentments right into a jury box. As you grow older, you'll see white men cheat black men every day of your life. But let me tell you something, and don't you forget it. Whenever a white man does that to a black man, no matter who he is, how rich he is, or how fine a family he comes from, that white man is trash." Atticus was speaking so quietly, his last word crashed on our ears. "There's nothing more sickening to me than a low-grade white man who will take advantage of a black person's ignorance. Don't fool yourselves. It's all adding up, and one of these days we're going to pay the bill for it. I hope it's not in you children's time." "Tom's jury show made up its mind in a hurry," Jem muttered. Atticus's fingers went to his watch pocket. "No, it didn't," he said, more to himself than us. "That was the one thing that made me think, well, this may be the shadow of a beginning. That jury took a few hours. An inevitable verdict, maybe, but usually it takes them just a few minutes. This time," he broke off and looked at us. You might like to know that there was one fellow who took considerable wearing down. In the beginning he was rarin' for an outright acquittal." "Who?" Jem was astonished. Atticus's eyes twinkled. "It's not for me to say, but I'll tell you this much. He was one of your old Sarum friends." "One of the Cunninghams?" Jem yelped. I didn't recognize any of 'em. You're jokin'." "Golly Moses," Jem said reverently. "One minute they're trying to kill him, and the next they're trying to turn him loose. I'll never understand those folks as long as I live." Atticus said the Cunninghams hadn't taken anything from or off of anybody since they migrated to the New World. He said the other thing about them was, once you earned their respect, they were for you, tooth and nail. Atticus said he had a feeling, nothing more than a suspicion, that they left the jail that night with considerable respect for the Finches. Jem said slowly, "You mean you actually put on the jury a man who wanted to kill you the night before? How could you take such a risk, Atticus? How could you?" "When you analyze it, there was little risk. There's no difference between one man who's going to convict and another man who's going to convict, is there?" "There's a faint difference between a man who's going to convict and a man who's a little disturbed in his mind, isn't there? He was the only uncertainty on the whole list." "What kin was that man to Mr. Walter Cunningham?" I asked. "Two sisters married two brothers. That's all I'll tell you. You figure it out." Aunt Alexandra was hooking a rug and not watching us, but she was listening. I remembered the distant, disastrous occasion when I rushed to young Walter Cunningham's defense. Now I was glad I'd done it. "Soon school starts, I'm going to ask Walter home to dinner," I planned. "Don't be silly, Jean Louise," said Aunt Alexandra. "The thing is, you can scrub Walter Cunningham till he shines. You can put him in shoes and a new suit, but he'll never be like Jem. Besides, there's a drinking streak in that family a mile wide. Finch women aren't interested in that sort of people." "But I want to play with Walter, Auntie. Why can't I?" She took off her glasses and stared at me. "I'll tell you why," she said. "Because he is trash. That's why you can't play with him. I'll not have you around him, picking up his habits and learning Lord knows what." I don't know what I would have done, but Jem stopped me. He caught me by the shoulders, put his arm around me, and led me sobbing in fury to his bedroom. He was growing taller. "Scout, don't let Auntie aggravate you." It seemed only yesterday that he was telling me not to aggravate Auntie. "It was her calling Walter Cunningham trash that got me going, Jem. That boy's not trash, Jem. He ain't like the Ewells." "You know something, Scout? I've got it all figured out now. I've thought about it a lot lately, and I've got it figured out. There's 4 kinds of folks in the world. There's the ordinary kind like us, and the neighbors. There's the kind like the Cunninghams out in the woods, the kind like the Ewells down at the dump, and the black people." "What about the Chinese and the Cajuns down yonder in Baldwin County?" "I mean in Macomb County. The thing about it is, our kind of folks don't like the Cunninghams. The Cunninghams don't like the Ewells, and the Ewells hate and despise the colored folks. I think it's how long your family's been readin' and writin'." "That Walter's as smart as he can be. He just gets held back sometimes because he has to stay out and help his daddy. Nothing's wrong with him. Naw, Jem. I think there's just one kind of folks. Folks." "That's what I thought too," Jem said at last, "when I was your age. If there's just one kind of folks, why can't they get along with each other? If they're all alike, why do they go out of their way to despise each other? Scout, I think I'm beginning to understand something. I think I'm beginning to understand why Boo Radley's stayed shut up in the house all this time. It's because he wants to stay inside.